All right, so when we're working in SSIS, SQL Server Integration Services, we usually have a pretty good idea of where our data is coming from. It's in a database, it's in a file, pretty standard stuff. But what happens when the data you really need isn't in a database or a flat file at all? Well, today we're going to tackle that exact puzzle. How to grab data that's kind of hiding in plain sight. I mean, think about it for a second. Most of the time, our data flows are pulling from these nice, predictable sources, right? You've got your structured databases, your clean CSVs, your organized Excel sheets. But what if the info you actually need is the metadata about the files? Things like, their size, their name, when they were last touched. Suddenly, the standard out-of-the-box SSIS tools, they start to feel a little bit limited. And this really shows that divide perfectly. On one side, you've got your standard, well-behaved sources that we all know and love. But on the other side, you've got these, let's call them non-traditional sources. We're not even talking about what's inside the files, but the data about the files. And for that, we're going to need a much more flexible, much more powerful tool. And that tool, my friends, is the SSIS Script component. The best way to think about it? It's like your own little custom data factory, built right inside your SSIS package. It is literally designed for these kinds of tricky, out-of-the-box situations. So, what is this thing exactly? Well, at its core, it's a data flow component that lets you write your own code, C# or VB.NET, to create custom sources, transformations, or even destinations. For our purposes today, though, we're going to focus on its incredible power as a custom source. Okay, enough theory. Let's see how this actually works in practice. We're going to walk through a perfect real-world example from the source article, grabbing all that juicy metadata from a folder that's just full of files. Getting this set up is actually a pretty straightforward 4-step process. First up, you just tell SSIS, hey, this component is going to be a source. Simple. Second, you define what your output data is going to look like, the columns. Third, you can connect it to variables, like a folder path, so your script is nice and flexible. And then finally, step 4 is where the magic happens. You write the actual script logic. And that second step, defining the output, is so important. Before you even think about writing a single line of code, you get to design your table structure from the ground up. You're basically telling SSIS, hey, I'm about to invent some data out of thin air, and this is exactly what it's going to look like. We're talking file name, file type, date modified, the whole shebang. And now for the fun part, the script itself. And listen, you do not need to be a C# wizard to get the gist of this. The first bit of code just finds all the files in a folder. Then, for every single file it finds, it does 2 things. It adds a new blank row to our output, and then it just fills in the blanks. It populates the file name column, the size column, and so on with the info it just found. It's a really simple but incredibly powerful loop. Okay, so we've successfully created our custom data source. That's awesome. But the real power of this script component, it goes so much further. Let's take a simple task, like splitting our data, and see how it reveals a feature that is a total game changer. So here's the new challenge. What if we need to split these files into 2 different groups based on their size? Maybe send the big files down one path and the small files down a completely different one. How would we pull that off? Well, the standard way, the textbook approach, is to use another component called the conditional split. You take the data coming out of our script, feed it into this new component, and it would act like a traffic cop, routing the rows based on a rule we give it. It's totally reliable, it works just fine, and honestly, it's what most people would probably reach for first. But there is a much more elegant solution. We can actually handle the entire split inside our script component by creating multiple totally distinct outputs from the very beginning. And this is the critical difference. This is the big aha moment. With a normal conditional split, every single one of its outputs must have the exact same columns. It's just a rule. But when you create multiple outputs directly from the script component, each of those outputs can have a completely, totally different structure. This is a massive advantage. I mean, this isn't just some neat little party trick. This unlocks a whole new universe of flexibility in how you design and build your data flows. And the source article we're looking at just nails it with this quote. You have the ability to create 2 different outputs with totally different attributes. Think about it. Maybe for image files, you want to output columns for height and width. But for text files, those columns are completely meaningless. With the script component, handling that is no problem at all.
So let's just recap the superpowers this thing gives you. First, you can handle pretty much any non-standard data source you can dream up. Second, you get to leverage the full power of C# and the entire .NET framework. Third, you can consolidate logic that might have taken 3, 4, or even more components, and you can put it all into one single efficient place. And finally, as we just saw, you can design multiple, completely unique outputs for tailor-made data streams. It's amazing.
The takeaway here is really clear. The next time you're staring down a tricky, non-traditional data source in SSIS, don't try to force a square peg into a round hole. The script component gives you the power to build the exact tool you need for the job. Which really only leaves one question. What custom data source are you going to build first?